record it. That's that loud voice. And there we go. Go ahead, Dave.
Good morning, everybody. I think I've alluded to this in the past, but Networks Northwest, Matt McCauley, Warren Call at Traverse Connect, Sakura Takano at Rotary Charities, and I have been having conversations about with public sector consultants, that's the public policy think tank based in Lansing, on how to kind of organize ourselves regionally around securing funding from the American Rescue Plan Act for our region's top priorities like housing and mental health and early childhood education and access to quality childcare. So after some to and froing, then right before the holidays, then those four organizations contracted with public sector consultants. And this phase of the project is first outreach to the nonprofit business and local government communities in Northwest Lower Michigan and asking them to weigh in on priorities for them from could be physical infrastructure, could be services and programs. And we want to try to kind of compile a list, and we're going to invite everybody to participate. So there's certain organizations that we definitely want to be part of it, but it's going to be an open process, and public sector is developing an online tool. So really any organization can fill out a form saying, here's our mission, here's what we're trying to accomplish, and here are the priorities that we're recommending we go after. And then step two is to match those priorities with various funding streams. So this is not just limited to the state share of American Rescue Plan Act funding, but also the Jobs and Infrastructure Act that was passed late in the fall, and then any other funding streams coming out of the state of Michigan, based on their annual budget process. And what public sector is going to help us do is determine among all those priorities which ones are eligible for which funding streams, and maybe apply a number of other criteria, like how sustainable would these programs be when the ARPA or physical infrastructure dollars run out. And then obviously the key after that is for our communities writ large to develop kind of an organized advocacy strategy to go after those projects and priorities that are eligible for funding. And that's sort of phase two. But first of all, we're putting together, just imagine in your mind's eye, kind of a grid with priorities on one axis and various funding streams based on eligibility on the other, and then kind of try to cross match those. We have already taken input from this group, the Friday morning group, and shared that with public sector consultants. So they have the work that you all put together. And we're in the process of just developing kind of a core narrative so we can explain to everybody what the heck this is all about. And then a plan to kind of get that, let's just call it a request for proposals out to as many people in our region as we possibly can. I mean, as I said, there's certain organizations like the larger local units of government, nonprofits and businesses, we definitely want to weigh in, but we want to invite everybody. This is going to be an open process. And it's going to be some kind of online form that people can go on a webpage and fill out the form and submit their priorities. And then public sectors can help us sort of sort out the prioritization process. My hope would be that at some point here, that this work in identifying state funding for our priorities would dovetail with the funding that the federal government directed from ARPA to local units of government. And, public sector consultants is also facilitating the Grand Traverse County Commission's work on the $18 million that the county received from ARPA. And so, and I think what they're recommending to the commission is that they put together an advisory group representative of the community to make recommendations to the county commission on where they ought to direct the dollars they have. So I think there's an opportunity for some kind of synthesis of what funding that local units have with this effort to identify and secure state funding for the priorities that we've got. But I can't speak for the Grand Traverse County Commission or the county staff, but I'm sort of guardedly optimistic that they're going to put something like that together, and that will help enable us to kind of bring these two efforts together in a way that's productive. So lastly, and a few people on the call, Gina and Ginger, and maybe a few others, are going to be joining me in a meeting with the governor this morning. She's in town to do the keynote address for the Northern Michigan Alliance's policy conference this afternoon. And so we're going to have a meeting with her this morning to talk about behavioral health. And we have sort of cross-sector representation, Child and Family Services, the CAC, Women's Resource Center, the schools, as well as Munson, Community Mental Health, DHHS, Community Health Innovation Region, others. And we're just going to have about a 45-minute roundtable conversation with her about some of the opportunities and challenges we're facing in Northwest Lower Michigan in the space of behavioral health. So sort of excited about that. This is one of the few times I've actually put on a tie in the last 4 years. So it feels really strange. I used to wear these all the time. But anyway, so I'm kind of excited about that opportunity. So let me stop there and see if anybody has any questions about what I've said or anything else. I don't have really an update, by the way, on the legislature. And the legislature, I think, just went back into session this week. And so they're just kind of getting organized. And so we'll have to see kind of exactly what their approach is going to be to appropriating these funds. And then, of course, once that happens, then state agencies and departments are going to have to develop some of the rules about how organizations can apply for grant funding, things like that. So stay tuned on the legislative front.
Hey, Dave, who will be representing infant mental health this afternoon at your roundtable?
Representing?
Infant mental health?
Well, we only had an opportunity to invite just over a dozen people, so we haven't sort of touched all the bases, but I would say, Nick Seclerc is going to be there representing the schools. And I would say that Children's Advocacy Center, Child and Family Services, others also, infant and child and adult mental health are all going to be on the table.
Okay.
NAMI will be there. We'll be there as well. Rick Coates and myself from NAMI will be attending that today too.
Yeah, I would hope that infant mental health will be mentioned because it is a unique and important aspect of our community mental health that has not been historically well represented at these kinds of gatherings. And there is an early childhood infant mental health consultation model that the state would very much like to be able to implement that addresses the needs of young children during the period of time when interventions can be most effective. So I would hope that somebody can bring that up.
Thanks, Mary, for sure. And, can I just add one more thing too, Dave, that if you want to touch on the final rule document that was issued apparently last week, the interim final rule was out there. We were all waiting on the final rule.
Yeah, and the final rule, I think, came out to around 450 pages. So I'm still on page 5. But what I am told is that the final rule is a lot more lenient to states and communities about how ARPA dollars can be used. So that turned out to be good news.
Dave, what's like the time frame on all this with the groups that you're working with and the groups of the county through public sector?
Yeah, I mean, I think ideally what would happen is we put together this kind of grid, matching priorities with, eligibility for these various funding streams by, sometime in early February. It's just going to take a little while to put the platform together, get the information out to as broad an audience as we can, collect the priorities, and then start doing the matchmaking. So I think probably realistically sometime in February.
And so one follow, you kind of alluded to the fact that there may be some possibilities of coordinating this with the county and city. Do you see that as a possibility in terms of the efforts for the region?
Yeah, I mean, I talked to Marty Colburn about all of this yesterday, and I know Beth Friend, who's East Bay Township Supervisor. I've had conversations with Nate Alger and Chris Forsyth at the county. So, I mean, obviously, in the end of the day, the townships and the county commissions and the city are going to be the ones that are going to have to decide, where they want to direct those dollars. But as I said, I'm kind of guardedly optimistic that maybe there's a way of saying, well, if you're going to secure funding from the state for this project, maybe we'll spend our funding that came directly to local units on that. And but I haven't, there's, sort of no guarantees, but I think there's sort of an obvious opportunity to collaborate on this.
Yeah, well, it's great that we have as much organization as we have, because this is one of those moments that probably never going to happen again in our lifetime. The rare moment.
Right. Yeah. And public sector has told us that not very many other regions around the state are doing what we're trying to do. And I have to say, I don't know how this is going to work out. But as Matt McCauley likes to say, it's certainly better than doing nothing. So it's sort of a grand experiment, but I'm hoping that we're going to sort of achieve our goal. And I think increase the likelihood that we'll, maximize the amount of spending that we can secure for Northwest Lower Michigan.
That's awesome. Great.
Can I just echo that too? David, thank you so much for your help and leadership in this. And please thanks Sakura and Matt and Warren for all of the efforts you guys are putting together and making this happen. So thank you. This is a big deal. This is a big deal.
Yeah. Of course.
Dave, do you think that this is so my understanding is that in Leelanau County, they're looking to potentially as soon as next week on the 19th, when they meet have their next ARPA meeting. I think they're having another one on the 31st, that they're looking to set an allocation, a percentage for broadband, percentage for other things. It seems fast. Could the strategy with public sector consultants be given to or shown to them as an option? Perhaps they just haven't. I'm just thinking of other counties too, not being entirely aware of what the possibilities are of how to spend this. And so I have that question, I guess, in Gina and Wendy. I know that you've have proposals in front of Leelanau County, and I'm curious to know where you are with that, and whether or not you feel like there might be space to say, pump the brakes a little bit, or full steam ahead. Let's, maybe you can get the money right now allocated.
Yeah, that's I think a good idea, is at least share with the Leelanau County Administrator what we're doing on this project. I don't know him very well, but he's got a good reputation. I think everybody here knows, Leelanau County really came out of the gates fast on ARPA funding and was already asking people to weigh in on priorities, as soon as the law was passed last fall. So they're a little bit ahead. And this project that we're talking about is focused primarily on securing funding that the state of Michigan controls. And, all these local units of government, they have their own kind of ways of doing business and cultures. And some of them, I've heard some say, if you want to have an impact on our policy decisions, the way you do that is by voting us in and out of office, which is a very traditional way of thinking about policymaking. And others, I think, are more interested in making sure that they get really good input from the communities about what the community's priorities are. So, it really kind of varies across the board depending on which local unit of government we're talking about. But I will reach out and just let them know that we're working on this.
They know a little bit. I happened to be in front of them last week with a group of other nonprofits providing detail on the proposals that we submitted. And so they're in, I think they were doing like 3 sessions because they had so many, they had 23 or so proposals in total. So they were planning on hearing from most of those organizations and agencies, and then making their decisions, like Taylor said, around what percentage of their dollars, which are about 4.2 million total, will be distributed, how they'll be distributed across sort of general priorities. They know that, well, they're considering the fact too that broadband might be able to be paid for out of a different pot and that sort of thing. And the groups that got to get, there were a group of all of those of us who were on the agenda for that day last week, spoke together prior to the meeting and agreed to really emphasize not being in competition with one another. We're all human services organizations, but, and that was good. And they heard that. But the other thing that they heard, at least from me, was that there is this regional effort happening to bring crisis mental health services to this region. And I suggested to them that I gave them contact, names, and at least one of those was a Leelanau County resident. I'm a Leelanau County resident. I guess that probably didn't hurt either. And they seemed open to hearing from them. And I asked Chet Janik, the administrator, to please reach out to them. And then asked them to reach out to him at the same time. So hopefully they'll get a better sense of what is going on and whether it's something that they want to participate in, because certainly Leelanau County residents have a big stake in an effort like that too.
Yeah, great.
I don't know where that leaves us, other than in a good spot, that we have some good things going on. I think that we're all kind of watching Leelanau County closely to see what they do. Taylor, your emphasis on broadband, right? Is there going to be pots that are created, on the state level that aren't there yet, right? That they could tap into instead of using their resources. I think that's an interesting point for sure. And something that, I don't know how you get in front of them because of just the county's commitment to broadband, right, at this point. And so it's just going to be an interesting thing to kind of watch. As Dave said so eloquently, as he usually does, this is a grand experiment for all of this, right? And so I think that that's just something that we need to keep in mind with everything that we're doing.
Yeah, I would think that I'm sort of on the other side of the coin here. Since there's no guarantee that we'd be successful in securing state funding for broadband, for example, I don't know whether Leelanau County will want to sort of rely on that when they're, if they just, delaying their decisions until they see how we do. So, it'll be interesting to see what the reaction might be.
Well, I at least appreciate that there may be some opportunity to look at things, especially when you talk about the crisis center. That doesn't, no one county would necessarily need one, but the region certainly needs one. And that's, I think if getting that systems or regional perspective is going to be, and I know that's part of today's conversation too at the policy conference, but there's some things that are very local and some things that have to be coordinated between different entities. So optimistic that this will work out.
Great. Any last comments, feedback?
I can just chime in really quickly. Taylor, I think you had a request, right, for the group? Do you want to share?
Yeah, you know what? The request follows what my question was. I had thought that it might be helpful for the Leelanau County Commissioners to hear from this group that we are in support of Gina and Wendy and Leelanau Christian Neighbors, Meals on Wheels. They all have been really fantastic proposals. And I know like Lyft, there's a lot of like letters of support that are being put in. And I saw an opportunity. I think there's an opportunity for additional letters of support. But I hadn't, in fairness, I hadn't checked in with Gina or Wendy whether or not you'd want that. It was an idea that I had.
You're not the only one, Taylor. That's great, though. And I'm sorry I forgot to even think of it to mention to the group, which is that that same idea actually came from Ty Wessel, one of the commissioners, who suggested that if we have, board members or supporters or advocates for our organizations that live in Leelanau County in particular, that this would be a really good time to express their support through letters or showing up at public, when there's public testimony at the beginning and end of their meetings and that sort of thing. So yes, I'm planning on sharing that with my board this month. And yeah, I'm sure others could do the same, and it would be good for them to hear from all of us. The timing is definitely right.
I'm wondering if there is a way to, you tell me if this makes sense or not, but a way to maybe get one letter that kind of lists the different projects, and then we can, have folks support that. Thoughts about doing something like that and showing the collaborative support, or is that not the way to do it?
You're talking about Leelanau County?
Mm-hmm. I am.
What, I don't even know, what are all the proposals? Is that something that we
I don't know.
Yeah, there's a list that you can access on there. Maybe I can send it to you, Ginger and Seth, and you can share it with the group, and then we can determine what the approach will be.
Sure,
I'll send it to you.
Sounds great. Okay, thanks, Gina. That sounds great.
I do think if we do that.
I'm sorry, Dan. It stems from the Housing Action Committee's, excuse me, request in support of Housing North and any entities. So we're talking about the housing aspect here, but a few of us put in some separate proposals for housing at Chet's request.
Dan, did you want to say something too?
No, I think the only thing is we might want to, if we did that, I think it would be helpful also to emphasize that they coordinate with other entities that are also looking how to spend this money. Mm-hmm. I think that would be an important message, especially if Dave connects with them too, to support his efforts.
Thank you. Okay.
I always love a good sign-on letter. So any opportunity we can have for that to get in there, I think is a good opportunity as well. Great. Anything else? So anything for the good of the order at this point? I think we're at that stage of the agenda. Hearing nothing, how do we feel? When should we meet again? I think that would be my kind of question for you all. I think that public sector consultants and with what's kind of that timeline, early February, but then there's some stuff that's going on. I've heard through the rumor mill that should be announced in GT County next week. And then there's the Leelanau County stuff. Do we want to get together next Friday and kind of debrief some of those decisions? Do we just want to do that via email and then meet in 2 weeks? What sounds good to everyone?
I think it's, you know, especially if the meeting can be short and kind of to the point, I think kind of like this one's going to be, I think it's fine to have a short update. If that's okay with you guys.
I think that sounds good.
It'd be wonderful to hear an update on the conversation with the governor today too. So that would be wonderful to meet next week and have that concise meeting.
I really like 30-minute meetings. So let Ginger and I put our heads together, kind of come up with a short agenda and then get that out. But let's plan to meet again next Friday for just 30 minutes. So make sure you have this coffee beforehand and we will get that agenda out. But otherwise, I hope everyone has a great week. We will see you again next Friday.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.
No.